Boston. I was the captain of Columbia A this year. It's probably almost certainly my last year playing any sort of collegiate quiz bowl, so I felt it'd be appropriate to just give out some of these opinions. It's been a real privilege to actually get to play nationals this year. It was very sad that we weren't able to play last year, due largely to the coronavirus pandemic, but very grateful to ACF and AQT for pulling off logistics. Let us have two fantastic nationals this year, which gave us an opportunity to compete against this incredibly diverse field, an incredibly deep field. So deep that I can only really come up with, at least in my personal opinion, three real tiers for the teams that came out this year. And so this video is basically just going to be ranking those teams. This is very, very subjective exercise, of course. I'm going to try to give a little bit of my opinion on each of these teams, perspectives on each of them, call-outs to particular players who are particularly talented, thoughts on my strengths and weaknesses of these teams, and why I think they finished in the order that they did in nationals, beyond factors just like luck. Call-outs to specific performances throughout the year that I've pulled up stats for, and just wide-ranging perspective as much as I can, because honestly the field is super deep and just awesome this year, and it's just been a great privilege to compete in so many good tournaments. So I have here 21 teams. I'm going to be placing them in these three tiers. I'm going to go from the lowest rank to the highest rank on my list of these 21, which comprise 21 out of the 25 I filled out on my player poll. So yeah, we'll go ahead and start. So in 21st place we have Washu. So Washu, perennial Charles Hong team. Charles Hong been leading this team for umpteen years. I'm sure it's starting to compete with Chris Ray at this point. And Charles had some great teammates this year. He had Athena, and they did a great job. Athena is a great player who brings in a ton of religion knowledge, visual arts, miscellaneous literature, just general support here. Paul Lee, formerly of Penn, and I don't know their other teammates as well. Jeremy, I think, is one of on their team. I don't know what Jeremy knows very much. Paul is an MD PhD student, so Paul brings a lot of music and biochem to the table, and that helped this team get a finally at long last something they were very proud of, a top bracket performance at nationals and a solid performance at ICT as well. I believe 19th. Yeah, that's not bad, especially 14.51 PBB. Top of looks like what their schedule was in the playoffs, so quite solid. So I have Washu in 21st. 20th I have Northwestern. So Northwestern, this is a team of, I believe, almost entirely graduate students. If you look at them, we have Nikhil, Rohin, Andrew Solich, and Christopher Sims. I believe 3 of these are science grad students, actually. Andrew and Rohin, I know, are both in chemistry, and then Christopher is in econ. This is a very widely dispersed team, very balanced team overall. They also had a pretty good performance, if I remember correctly, when I played them at Workshop Midwest. Maybe they. I don't know how these brackets are ranked, but yeah, their team definitely had a good performance at Workshop, despite the fact that they were missing Chris, who's their third scorer. So again, a very respectable team, able to compete at a pretty high level, pulled up some solid performances in second brackets and the like. Widely dispersed knowledge across, especially history, sciences, and music and economics on the part of Chris. So up next I have Cornell. So Cornell earns this ranking this year despite Jeffrey not playing for them. But despite this, Cornell put up some very solid performances. Jonathan Tran in particular is an extraordinarily good history player. I don't know if that... Yeah, it doesn't look like they played ICT, but they played ACF Nationals, and they They got second place in undergraduate, having lost that to Brown. But this is still a great team. Raymond, I believe, is mainly a literature player. Jonathan is mainly a history player. Between the two of them, they got a lot of points. They had some solid support. I believe they might have been missing Daniel Shu. I'm not sure he's part of their A team, but yeah, overall that's very very solid squad. And if Jeffrey were part of that team, this year it doubtless would have placed higher. So right above Cornell, I have MIT. That's I believe the beaver's name is Tim, if I'm not mistaken. But you can see the MIT beaver here. MIT this year is represented by I believe Grace Liu, Catherine Lay, David Gomez, and Swapnil Garg. And this is a team. Grace came out of retirement recently. It's great to see her playing again and adapting well to the game again. And she's still an absolute beast, as much of a beast as I remember playing against her during my undergrad years. Great on opera, a lot of core literature, parts of miscellaneous parts of the arts, and as a biology graduate student, well versed in bio and chemistry. So she's been leading that team. She's had a great support. Catherine, great science player, graduated from high school. Swapnil and David, I don't know as much about how they know, but they put out some good performances there, and they deserve to be recognized. And right above them, I put Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, I had the privilege of working with the Tech team on IKEA this year. I was very proud of that set. They made, their team members made some great contributions. They're led by Hari Parmeshwaran. He's a fantastic player, absolutely fantastic player, generalist. Won the HSNCT in 2019, has scaled well to college level, puts up ridiculous numbers routinely on regs minus sets, and still manages to scale to regs and managed to pull his team into the top bracket at nationals too. Just look at this performance: 14.31 PPB, and that's not bad at all. And Tejas, Soham and Sarah pulling some good numbers there as well. So very, very good performance from Tech this year. In particular, I believe they beat OSU. Yes, that's right. They beat OSU. And then they, I believe, beat Illinois in the prelims of ICT. Yeah, they did, which is extraordinarily impressive on their part. And of course, assisted by some nags from Illinois, but still very, very impressive. So a well-earned ranking from Tech on that note. And right above them, I put UNC. And so why am I putting UNC above them? Because I guess if you look at the Nats finishes, UNC goes a bit below Tech. I mean, you can see their PPG's higher. And they didn't play ICT, so it's a bit hard to rank them. But I think subjectively, I'm fairly confident saying they're a stronger team. And it's not just on this PPG, but it's being impressed with their players, particularly Vincent Du. Vincent was just an utter beast at NASAT. He played incredibly well against us at ACF Nationals. He's just such a well-versed player, and you can see in how his team. They really came a long way this year. They made all their goals of top bracket and 14 PPB at Nats. Vincent clearly leading the team in scoring, but everyone putting in some good contributions. Really a team that earned its own this year, and I look forward a lot to seeing more good things from them. So I'm going to lump these two together. I'm going to put Cambridge and Oxford next to each other. Do I have Oxford here? I have Oxford. Okay, well, I might have forgotten yes, Cambridge here. I put Oxford above Cambridge, and that was solely on the basis of the Regionals Invitational, where Oxford did outperform Cambridge. I don't know if this is Cambridge's proper A team, but I know that Oxford and Cambridge tend to trade off titles in the UK, but Oxford's come out on top on a couple of tournaments, even when Cambridge had better stats. But in this tournament in particular, I think Oxford really showed up. From what I know of the British players, they scale pretty well to nationals level, and I think you could see that from the very solid performance of Cambridge at this year's ICT, 16 PPB, 20 powers. That's quite good, especially for a hard ICT set. So I think that's quite respectable on their part. But Oxford seemed to perform a bit better when both were in contention against a harder field of opponents. I'm just gonna have to compare these two teams real quick. Let's see, Cambridge. So Cambridge was missing a player at regionals. Missing, looks like Nick Wise. Not quite sure. It seems like he's a contributor. So maybe this ranking is unfair, but the Brits can make us mad over that if they care to. And at the top of this list, I'm gonna put Brown. So Brown, the Brown team, it's composed of a lot of. The Brown A team is mostly fairly recently graduated high schoolers. I believe Anson and Walter are both. Anson, Walter, and Michael, I think, are all sophomores, and Jason is a freshman. And if you just consider all of that, putting it together for a 14.89 PPV bonus performance here is really impressive. They also they didn't go for D2; they went for D1, and they got 12th in D1. Again, with a quite solid PPB and a good number of powers. If we take a quick look at them, yeah, that's really impressive in my opinion. And they got the I believe they got the UG title both times. Yeah, they got the UG title both times. So really good on Brown's part. I think they're solidly top of the B tier here. So that's gonna start bringing us to the A tier. So A tier, we're gonna start with Maryland. Maryland being at number 12. So with Maryland at number 12, this is very interesting because if you think about this year's Maryland team, it's not really that different from the Maryland team of the previous year. The difference is there's no Jack Lewis, and instead we have Connor Mayers. And Connor, they're a solid player. I don't think they are quite on the same level of specialty as Jack in, say, music and history, which was a big add to that Maryland team. And, a lot of those teams have been out of practice, especially Graham. So they're solid. They've been writing for things, but I think it's definitely a worse Maryland team than the previous year. That said, they still had some great runs this year. They almost beat Florida, I believe, at nationals this year. I think they were 10 points short, if I recall correctly. Literally one mispronunciation short from getting a tie against Florida and forcing a tiebreaker toss-up. And in particular, I want to recognize Caleb. He was really, really carrying that team, but still a very solid team overall. 16.45 PPV at nationals. That's quite good. And their performance at ICT was also very respectable. So I'm going to recognize them. I'll put them at number 12. And for them, I'm going to put Yale. So Yale again, right above Maryland at in placement at ICT. And if you look at ACF Nationals, Yale didn't have Steve at ACF Nationals, and so perhaps I'm being a bit too generous with ranking Yale here. I mean, again, you look at their PPG, it's a bit lower, even though they do have a higher performance. But if we dig a bit into the stats, I think, ICT did neg every tournament. I think Steven, he's a great NAQT player, but I think the slower format of ACF lets him potentially work this team better. I'm not sure. But I'm going to put Yale over Maryland for that placement, plus my extraordinarily subjective assessment of Steven's skills. I put a very high value on Steven's skills as a history and science specialist, plus ability, just massive experience with the game, and able to pick up a ton of parts. So right above Yale, I'm going to place Berkeley. Berkeley is, again, a very interesting team. One of the teams I fear playing the most this year, personally. Insofar as they have great stats. They have a wide range of deep specialties, and these specialties in particular seem to always get the better of me whenever I played them. Rahul, Rahul would always get me on the lit. Vivian would always get me on the history. All of the above. And so Berkeley, a very, very fearsome team. They got very unlucky getting stuck in a bracket with us and Ohio State in the prelims of ICT, which sort of guaranteed that they had to get at least one upset. Although honestly, beating either of us wouldn't have been that much of an upset for this team because they've done it before. There you can see here at Fluppen, their results were very, very good, very high placement. This is just super, super solid team. With some which got unlucky brackets at both nationals. Honestly, sure. I mean, you could say that they shouldn't have taken a loss to what team did they lose to in the prelims that they shouldn't have. Okay, maybe they shouldn't have taken a loss to UNC, but UNC is a good team. Like, that's not a huge shame to take a loss to them. And between that and the losses to Stanford and Harvard, two very good teams, they were out of the top bracket, and that's just very unfortunate. And sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles, and I feel very bad for them in that respect. But they're a very, very good team, and they deserve to be recognized as such. Speaking of Harvard, I'm going to put them right above Berkeley. And this might be, this might be too results-oriented in terms of thinking. But, I mean, Harvard's PPG was better. PPB was better there. It was worse at ACF Nationals, I guess. But, they did make the top bracket both times, and Harvard was pulling off a lot, in particular at ACF Nationals, a lot of really, really crucial upsets, boosted, of course, by Jason Golfinos' pockets of knowledge. I mean, you can see these victories over Illinois and Florida that were just causing all sorts of disruption in the playoffs here. And a very, very solid performance at ICT as well. I'm just looking here. Close losses to Maryland and Florida. Win over Ohio State. Fighting a good game against Stanford there. No, it's a very, very respectable performance by Harvard, led by Jason Golfinos. And, I mean, I'm not sure what much there is to say about... I suppose I can start going in a bit more depth here, now that we're in the top 10. I think Berkeley, I guess the thing with them is inconsistency. Like, they have a lot of coverage, but in particular in some areas it's not quite as solid. I mean, Rahul knows a lot of physics, knows some physics in areas he studied, like electrical engineering. There's a lot of computer science knowledge on this team. Shahar has a decent base in bio and chemistry, but, it's not super well up there. And Vivian has, great knowledge of visual arts. Rahul obviously is a fantastic generalist and lit an arts player, and Michael obviously knows his pockets of CE and history well, but it can't carry every single game. And it's just not broadly spread enough, I think, that in some games it probably just cost them. And Harvard, I feel like I would imagine the same. Kevin is a great... They have coverage on all subjects, but it's just so hard to cover this super consistently at the nationals level. And Jason, I know Jason studies, but I'm not sure he's very, very deep, but I'm not sure he's quite as broad as some of the other top generalists of this game, although he's an incredibly good player. And so I think that's where I end up with those teams. Right over there, I'm going to put Texas. Texas, fantastic results this year. William Golden, a player who is, I think, very similar to Rahul in many ways. Although I think William has a bit of a broader base and a bit of less deep specialties. William, fantastic literature and arts player, but quite solid at history, knows plenty of philosophy to go around, can pick up a science toss-up on occasion. Really, really good team leader. Really humble guy, great guy in general, and surrounded by a fantastic set of players. Jas is an amazing history player. Brad is an amazing religion, myth, philosophy, social science player, and then Ryan is a solid biology specialist with some coverage in a lot of sciences and some history. So it's a really solid team, and it's great to see this Texas team do well. They got fourth at this year's ICT and tied for fifth at this year's nationals. So perhaps the ranking of eighth is a bit surprising seeming. That being said, I think honestly, just looking at the raw strength of a lot of the other teams, especially some of them that weren't quite able to compete this year, I think I have to end up putting Texas at eighth. And I'm not, this is not like a denigration or implying that they got lucky to get the placement they did. But when you say tie for fifth, that's fifth, sixth, and seventh, and they're all tied for fifth. And so I think between all this, I think I'm comfortable putting Texas 8. But it feels tough because Texas is a really hard opponent this year. The games we played against them were always quite solid. Really love the players on that team and I hope they continue doing great things. I'm glad to see they'll be back together next year. So right above Texas, I'm going to put Virginia. So Virginia is a bit of a wild card in the sense that they didn't get to play either nationals because Itamar is busy, but let's just take a look at some of the stats this team put up. So we have here a 22.5 PPB on Workshop. So what happens if you stack that up against some of the teams that played the sort of premier Workshop site in Minnesota? So we on Columbia, we had 22.31. We were playing with a 3-person team. So I'd like to think we would have been better if we had the 4th, but so it goes. But if you just look at that PPB and the raw power numbers, 5 in 56 10 games, abstract that down, so it's like a little less than about 50 in 9 games, similar to us, ahead of the teams in the field here. And also this tournament really highlights how good OSU was, and also how well Illinois scales, considering their performance at this tournament versus their nationals. But yeah, no, I just want to look at this and just show off how good Virginia is at full strength. Again, this is not against like top tier opponents, obviously, and assessing against top tier opponents is of course what is most important, but bonuses are not assessed against that, and Virginia was just a little less than us on the ACF Regionals qualifier. Itamar got within a couple toss-ups of getting to the top bracket at 2018 Nats, and he's gotten way better since then. I think this team just really deserves to have his 7th spot and be atop the A tier. But I can't put them any higher simply because they didn't play nationals this year, so that's what I'm going with. But I have a huge respect for this team, and I hope to see great things from them in the near future. So now we move on to the S tier. And when I talk S tier, this is quite tough because this is what I would mentally think of as matchups I consider even or things I'm scared of. But that's not even like quite fair, because if you look at all these A tier teams, these are teams you don't really want to be facing in a playoff game. They're all teams that could definitely beat you, teams that almost definitely came close to beating us, in particular Harvard in the playoffs and Berkeley in ACF Nationals and ICT respectively. But this is my S tier. These are the teams I think were the most legit contenders for nationals titles this year, and there's a lot of them, like 6 S tier teams. That's frankly a lot, and I had to think about this for a while. Maybe it would be 4, maybe 5, maybe 6, but I honestly think any of these teams could have won nationals this year, had a couple more things gone their way, and sometimes it was the margin of like 2-3 toss-ups. So rounding out this S tier is going to be Ohio State. So let's quickly look at Ohio State's stats. So if you look at their ICT playoff games, they were all very close losses. These are all 1-2 toss-up losses. 1 toss-up loss against Florida, 5-point loss against Texas. I would say this is a 1-2, maybe a 1, but certainly 2 toss-up loss against Chicago, and 1 or 2 against Harvard. After clearing the prelim bracket here, which is very good on their part. and they got fourth at ACF Nationals, and that's really good. And in particular, while getting fourth at ACF Nationals, just like look at the teams they beat. They beat Harvard, obviously. They beat Florida, the eventual winners of the tournament. They beat Illinois, beat Stanford. This is a really fantastic performance on their part. They took a loss to Georgia Tech. Chris is liable to do that at some point. They took a loss to Chicago, and they took 2 losses to us. But look, I mean, if somehow Georgia Tech didn't meet the top bracket, Ohio State's in the final of ACF Nationals. It's just so close in that way. And, I think that really has to be recognized, and it's a testament to Chris's enduring skills as a generalist. He's been at the same level for a long time. Clark is a fantastic player, and their support players are able to add some good toss-ups every game as well. So, great job, Ohio State, this year. I'm really happy that this team will get to be together for yet another year, and I look forward to seeing more great things from Chris. Right above them, I put Chicago. Now, this might be a bit weird, considering that Ohio State technically, I guess, finished above Chicago in the tournaments they played, but the thing I really want to go back to when I talk about this is, what was it? It should be the Regionals Invitational. Yeah. Look at this positioning. Again, this might be overvaluing lower level results, considering that once you scale up to Nationals, this Chicago team looks a little bit worse than this Ohio State team, but I think you could make a reasonable argument that, especially once you take a look at these PPGs, some great PPGs from Chicago there. Not as great at ACF Nationals for sure, but still reasonably solid. And I think you can make an argument either way with these two teams. I think it'd be totally fair to flip them. I think you can go either way. I certainly am personally more afraid of playing Ohio State. But, I'm just going to rank these teams for now, out of massive respect for the depth of the Chicago team. And I think, we could have seen a bit more out of them this year. But look, it was a tough year for a lot of us in Quiz Bowl, and I get it. There was a lot of other things to focus on, and this is still a fantastic team. A mighty challenge for anybody who faced off against them. Put up great stats, put up, I believe, the highest PPB at Nationals. Yes, they did. And also at ICT. Yep. Also at ICT. So, very, very, very strong team. Right above them, I'm going to put our ICT opponents, Illinois. So, Illinois, very interesting team. Very volatile team, I would say, frankly. They had, they were a very high neg team this year. Which I'm not sure quite what the dynamic going on is there, but you can sort of see that at, you didn't really see that at regionals, which is very interesting. But you did see a lot of that, say, this workshop. You saw it in the finals of ICT, and I think you particularly saw it at ACF Nationals, where they had 10 more negs than anyone in the top bracket playoffs, and actually 19 more negs. Frankly, more than, no, not 19 more negs. That would be 16 more negs than anyone if you don't look at Wustholz. So, it's a lot of negs. So I'm not quite sure what the mentality there was. It might have been aggressive play. Might be rust. I can't be quite sure. But regardless, this team demonstrates incredible knowledge consistently. Aroni, she's a great player. She's been around forever. She's has really come back into her role as a generalist, I would say. Improved a lot at history recently, or gotten back on a high level. Not as much of a super deep lit specialist, but still has that to go around and can contribute all around really across the distribution. But she also has fantastic support from all of her teammates, and this really culminated in an amazing ICT performance. Like, you just look at their team, it's statistically better than us, going to the numbers into the finals, and these are just really, really great numbers all around. So yeah. So I think a well-deserved fourth there. I guess I would just stop at fourth simply because, they were very close to winning ICT. but I think they fell pretty far off of nationals on account of some of the mistakes they made in their strategy, and maybe their aggressive strategy, I guess, is what they had, paid off more at ICT, but also led to some not great losses, like the one against Georgia Tech, which thankfully for them didn't carry, and the two games then lost against us, where they negged 5 times each, which was not great. So I think Illinois, on knowledge, incredibly high. On how they played it, I think it could have been better. I think we could have seen even better things. And granted, they walloped us. They absolutely walloped us at ACF Nationals. They were our second worst walloping, aside from the finals two against Florida. But still, I think there's something missing there, and I think we have to take that into account. The inconsistency of this Illinois team, their performance, and their high net grade. And I think I'm gonna have to leave them at fourth for now. So above them, I debated this a lot. Where they put Florida, where they put Stanford, where they put us, frankly. I think this is where it gets tough. Because you look at Stanford, they had the best stats at both the nationals in terms of PPG and PPB. You look at Florida, they won ACF Nationals. And you look at us, we won ICT and we got second in Nationals. I think that's very hard. But I know Jonathan well, and I put a lot of trust in Jonathan's words. And I think based on this, I'm going to put Florida third. There was a big improvement in Florida's quality between ICT and ACF Nationals, thanks largely to my understanding due to Tracy improving. But, you know, regardless, they made I believe 5th at ICT, if I remember correctly. Let's take a look. Yes, they made 5th at ICT, and they first at ACF Nationals. Well, that's a fantastic performance. I would certainly rank them no less than third for pulling that off. I think the reason I just don't put them above Stanford and us, I guess, is on Stanford's part. Well, Florida they say they think they're worse than Stanford. If you look at the numbers, Stanford was more consistent across the year. They also placed third at both nationals, whereas the spread from Florida, first versus 5th, again, that's like 1 or 2 games, but still, I think that matters. And it's hard to average out Tracy. I typically would take a team at its strongest, but I think there was a hair's breadth separating a lot of the teams that won all these tournaments, and I think ability to consistently perform at the top level and beat a lot of those teams above you really, really matters. Let's take a look at some of Florida's games. Their losses were pretty decisive against Stanford and Illinois, and they had a good win against Chicago. They had a close win against Ohio State. They pulled out a lot of games at nationals. They insisted because their team, they made their opponents neg. I would credit Florida's intimidating, loud, shouting strategy, confidence, and being skilled enough to take advantage of the opportunities they were given. I would give them a ton of credit. But look, I think I'll rest by Jonathan's opinion, and I'll put Florida below Stanford. Which, speaking of Stanford, I'm going to put them second. And I think their just results speak for themselves here. They were the third ranked team at both ACF Nationals and ICT. That's incredible consistency. They had the best stats at both tournaments. Again, very high level of consistency. They had great performances throughout the year. Let's take a look at Floppin. They did better than us at Floppin by about 30 PPG. They did, their whole team wasn't playing the Regionals Invitational, but even without their whole team playing, bringing in Bryce and Mariana, they still had a very good performance without their 2 best players, which is super impressive in terms of their bench depth. And if you were to rank, I think if you had to pick a favorite team going into both nationals, I think it would probably be Stanford as a favorite for both of them. I think some people were even more optimistic than that. I think some people put them over 50% favorite. I think that was always unreasonable. I think this field is so close that you really can't be doing that. But I think you have to take into account how well this team performs in clutch situations. And look, I mean, their stats are better on paper, but does that always mean you're consistently able to generate the points against the opponent at the time that's most important? And that's a very crucial skill of collegiate quiz bowl. And I think Stanford and their very solid numbers all around. Most powers in ICT. I can wax on about this consistently, but I think another thing I guess that cropped up at nationals for them was negs, and they weren't like a super neg high team, but they often had them at like disopportune times. It seems like they occasionally took pressure. They didn't take pressure that well. The 6 neg game against Florida, the 5 neg game against us, some of the prelims games. Maybe I'm misassessing this, but I think results speak for themselves, and that means Stanford has to go in second here without the championship. And perhaps this is very indulgent, but I'm going to put us first, which is interesting because you think about it, we sort of played above our PPG at the Nationals. I mean, we were obviously still quite a consistent team throughout the year, even if we weren't necessarily consistent in games. I mean, you look at regionals, we had the second highest PPG, despite lacking our fourth. So did Illinois, by the way, which is a big credit to them. Still had solid numbers at Flop-In. Still had very solid numbers as a 3-person team at Workshop. Lots of tournaments we did well at, but we won ICT, and I think a large part of this was us just playing well in the playoffs. We didn't play very great in the prelims, but in the playoffs we got a lot of fairly narrow wins, I would say. Stanford and Chicago both being fairly narrow wins. Texas also, almost a bit less narrow. And then the Illinois games, obviously, a lot of you all got to see them. But I think there's something there in terms of we were consistently able to come in clutch when it really mattered. Maybe that's just luck, but there's something to be said for my teammates who are incredibly low neg, incredibly stoic, just buzz when they know things, are really able to be, I'm a very volatile player, or I certainly can be, and I managed to tone that down a few times in the playoffs. My teammates were just a solid, consistent bedrock of a few toss-ups, a game support, and then massive upside, particularly on the part of Gerhardt, who can just absolutely go off in some games, as Matt Bollinger's team got to experience at Flop-In. But no, I mean, we got first at ICT, we got second at Nationals, and I think there's a reason for that. And at Nationals, we got second and had the third highest PPG, despite not having our full team. And look, we didn't have our full team. I can't really be salty about that. It happens, and we got the result there despite that. Who knows what could have happened if we had the full team? Maybe we would have crashed out and gotten worse. Maybe we would have won the tournament. Who knows? But we got the result despite that, and Caroline was an amazing contributor in Gerhardt's place, an absolutely amazing literature player. And you can just look at these statistics. Just my teammates, amazing, rock-solid bed of support. Noah nailing his areas, Caroline nailing her areas, and then Noah S. just pulling all sorts of stuff across the distribution, in addition to being an amazing music player. And, I think, it's hard to say why we played above our PPG. It might just be a question of where we're buzzing on toss-ups, and maybe we're just lacking coverage in some areas. Not just maybe, we certainly are, If you're relying on me to get the physics question, you're definitely lacking coverage in some areas, but we managed to pull it off. And yeah, I think between the results, I think it's fair to rank us number one at the end of the day. And so that's where I'm going to be putting us. I think there's a lot of in-depth analysis I probably missed while going through the entirety of this video. I could wax poetic about tons of different amazing players across the spectrum here. Um, but that's a topic for another time. What I will say is that seems YouTube stopped playing. Okay. What I will say is that this is an incredibly deep field. Every game at Nationals was a challenge this year. It was a privilege to play both of them. And I see it, while perhaps Quiz Bowl isn't as like top heavy as before, it doesn't have as many like super giants, amazing, insane teams as before, or even as much as last year when we had the colossal Columbia and Chicago teams. I think it's amazing to see a field this deep, where there's this many people getting this good, where I have to be, I as the selfishly number one ranked team, have to be worrying about my game against UNC, or Illinois is potentially taking a loss to Georgia Tech, or Stanford is playing it close against a zillion of the teams ranked in the A tier, or the team at the top of the A tier didn't even get to play nationals, but is so clearly incredibly good that that like they're probably a 17 PPB Nats team or something. Like, this is a super super deep field, and I hope it keeps up. I mean, most of Florida is going to be graduating. A lot of Columbia is graduating. Chicago, parts of Harvard, but they'll be replaced. Yale, Cal, but I can see some of these teams stepping up. I can see a lot of great things coming out of UNC and Brown. The British teams, I think, are still together and all improved. Same with MIT. Same with Georgia Tech. Same with Cornell. There's a lot of these B tier teams I could see really moving up. I'm not going to bet on which of them, but I'm just hoping to see it. And there's going to be a very, very robust S tier next year as well, with several of the at least 3 of the contenders really sticking around there, and hopefully some teams from the A tier, even B tier, stepping up. So yeah, Quiz Bowl's in a great state. Hope you enjoyed listening to my random thoughts and ramblings on this topic. Again, it's not particularly organized, but it's hard to. It's Quiz Bowl in general for you, and I could talk very, very long time about any individual aspect of this. So feel free to message me if you'd like to hear that. But for now, this is Will signing off. The music stopped, so I think I should too. And yeah, take it easy, everyone. Cheers.